Hello and welcome back to She's in Focus, the podcast dedicated to inspiring and empowering female filmmakers and video creators from all walks of life and on every step of their creative journey. I'm your host, Kel Grant, an aspiring filmmaker from New Jersey who's just trying to turn my passion into something more and connect with amazing women who have the same passion for video. One of those being Mya Fullmer, a filmmaker and YouTuber who's just as passionate about creating space for and amplifying female voices in the filmmaking industry. I'm so excited to have her on today. Thanks so much for being here, Mya.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to start this episode like we start every episode. I want to know, where it all began for you. How did you get started with video and with filmmaking?
Well, I think I've always had stories kind of floating around in my head. And for most of my growing up years, like all of my growing up years, technology didn't really exist to make videos. Just it wasn't there. I mean, I am Generation X. So I grew up in the 1980s, and so people now are in video are influenced by this YouTube generation. I was part of the MTV generation. Back when MTV was new and basically just virtual radio. And it was new and everyone was talking about it, and you had to buy a cable TV package in order to see it. And I remember going over to my friend's house to watch it because her parents weren't cheapskates like my parents were, and they would pay for basic cable.
Right.
But I remember being so intrigued by how a piece of music could make the visuals look like a video could make the visuals look better to the song, and the song would sound better with the visuals. More than it would if just they were on their own. And so from then on, as a kid, I just sort of imagined my life as a series of MTV music videos. And that's just sort of where all those videos stayed in my mind. And it wasn't until 20 years later, when I was an adult, that the technology developed enough that I could actually put into reality these stories that still come into my mind. So
yeah, absolutely. So those visuals have stuck with you all these years. But so once the YouTube generation kind of came to fruition, did you transition from like those MTV days to the YouTube generation and start getting inspiration from filmmakers in that sense?
Yeah, I started seeing, it sort of never went away. I could never make the things I wanted to as a kid, and so the technology wasn't there, and so it had to go to the only technology that did exist at that time, which was a paper and pencil, and I became a writer, which I still love. Wow. And the video just never kind of went away. And when YouTube started coming out, and not even YouTube, but just the whole, I think like 2008, iMac came loaded with iMovie, and so I knew that it was available to use. I could make them, and then I started doing videos. I think we went out and finally bought a computer we could finally afford. We were poor, starving college students at the time, and I finally bought one. And that, I had it like a day, and I made my first video within a day. And I uploaded it to YouTube as sort of like a way to show history or show stuff my kids to our family who were scattered across the country. As far as making the actual videos, I remember so I'd always liked doing them. So I would do maybe one a year for a lot of years. And then one year I remember making a Christmas video for our church or something. And it was like a nativity, thing with the kids. And it was really good, and I really liked it, and everyone cried, and it was nice. And then every time we would move, I would make another one for the next congregation that we were in. And by the third time I had done it, I was like, yeah, I got this. And then this one time I started, I asked this guy who was in film school to help me film the kids. And when I put his footage next to mine, I started crying, because I could see in three times of doing that video, I had not improved at all. I had stayed exactly the same level, no progress. And that was the point where I realized I want to get better at this. And I still didn't know how. I didn't know where to go. And it wasn't until like maybe a year ago I stumbled across a creator platform called FullTime-Filmmaker. And that showed what to do, how to do it, what you needed, and that's what started me putting actually things on YouTube. So at first it started out just being me with my kids, and then it graduated into me actually making content to get used to being on YouTube and to show myself and record my progress.
Right. That's awesome. So when you were making these videos for your church, even though you were getting that positive feedback from the congregation, you were still comparing yourself to other filmmakers, and that discouraged you in a way. Am I getting that?
A little bit. I wasn't really, I guess I was. I wasn't that, I just knew that I was not improving. And that was the point where I realized I wanted to do something better than I was. And so at that point I looked at, well, do I need to go to film school? And I checked into that, and I'm like, that's about $50,000. That's not happening. So I have to figure out another way. But looking at all the other, other filmmakers, and I didn't even call myself a filmmaker. That's something that you would call at that point. I didn't even know the words. When I first started, I just called myself a videographer because that was the only word I knew. And as I got into more into YouTube and the filmmaking section, I thought, YouTube or a filmmaker, I can apply that to myself, which still felt kind of weird because I that's like an old school word for like Spielberg or Scorsese or something like that, and not suburban moms driving their kids around. So, and then I landed on content creator, which felt like a better fit at this point. So I feel like I'm a editor, videographer / content creator who is trying to become a filmmaker, in our mind.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about the distinction there, because I think I've always, when I was going through, when I was in high school, the term, when you heard filmmaking, you associated it with major motion pictures and the big studios in Hollywood. It wasn't until I graduated college where I was introduced to this kind of new age filmmaking, like videography that's cinematic can be considered filmmaking. So wedding filmmaking, commercial filmmaking, like the term has definitely evolved a lot over the years. And I was surprised to see that. And I found when I graduated, because I studied video production, but I studied like studio production, like I was supposed to kind of go that route. And then I saw what was being
that's
created.
all there was.
Yeah, exactly. Now I think, college kids and younger kids are a lot more fortunate now, because a lot of the universities are starting to incorporate like DSLR filmmaking and things like that. Or a lot of kids are realizing, I don't need to go get a college degree. I can open up my own, videography business or filmmaking business, make films and make some money and grow a business from the ground up without having to shell out, tens of thousands of dollars at a university. But the distinction between filmmaker and content creator, is it something that you feel like you have to earn that title, filmmaker? Is that why that content creator is more fitting to you? Tell me about that.
I do. I feel like I have not earned the term filmmaker. I think other people who can do or at the same level that I am in, and they can call themselves filmmakers somehow. And I do, but kind of I still would call myself a filmmaker. In fact, I think the first time I ever said it out loud, I was in a conversation with someone, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker, content creator for YouTube." And I sort of like just did this little gasp at myself. I was like, did I just say that? But once I said it out loud, it became, yeah, I guess I am. I guess I can call myself that. So
right, yeah. For me, I don't know if you noticed in my intro, I still call myself an aspiring filmmaker, because I think kind of like what you were saying, I feel like I haven't like earned the reps yet. Yeah. When I say, when I hear the term filmmaker, I say, okay, that's someone with a portfolio, whether that's with professional work or personal work. That's somebody who's, has the equipment, has actually taken the time to go out and produce content. I think that it's safer calling myself an aspiring filmmaker.
That's exactly right. It is safer to call yourself aspiring than to actually say the thing, Somehow that gives you space to mess up, and it's okay. At least that's how I feel.
No, I completely agree, which is interesting because I launched my production company in February, and I still call myself an aspiring filmmaker, even though I technically have a business now. But it's like, even with that business, because of the pandemic, I haven't been going out and filming for clients. If anything, right now, I'd say I'm a video editing service because that's what I actually have clients for that service. But which I think makes me doubt my filmmaking abilities even more because I only just got my DSLR camera last year, and it scared me for so long. It was, I bought this shiny new camera and it honestly sat on the shelf for months because I just, for some reason, I was like, okay, I'll get the camera and then all these skills that everybody else has will just be bestowed upon me.
Magically occur. It's right.
Yeah, and of course it didn't work like that. So I remember the first video I made with the GH5, which is the camera that I'm using now. I was so proud of it because I was like, wow, like it has it has slow-mo, it has, 60 frames per second. I have, the blurry depth of field with the 2.8 aperture. These are all terms that I just learned too.
Yep.
Like I was even someone who went to school for media and video production. I was coming out of college, there was just a disconnect. It's like I should have had the skills to be a filmmaker, but there was so much that I wasn't taught in my classes that I was like yourself, lucky enough to find Full-Time-Filmmaker. And I kind of dove into that. But even with the course, I don't know if you can relate to this, I find that I really have to like put time aside to watch the lessons. Even after I bought it, it was not something that I was like super excited about diving into. It was something that was super intimidating for me.
Yeah.
And it took me, months to be able to be like, okay, let's just get through the technical section, or let's just get through the equipment section, one video at a time, one video a day, and see where you are. The whole thing was just intimidating for me.
Yeah, it was, I guess it was not too intimidating for me because I didn't really have anything. I had not committed to doing anything. I had any, and so I got it. I knew this was going to be the venue where I would learn how to do these things that I wanted to learn how to do. How does everybody light themselves to look so beautiful? How do they make those shadows? How do they get that fuzzy background, which, depth of field? I didn't know what to call it. And so I remember watching all of the free things on YouTube first from that course. And I wouldn't allow myself to buy it until I had watched everything like 2 to 3 times so I could see if I really, really was serious about it. And when I did buy it, I ran through everything. I ran through as many things as I could, like right away, because I wanted to see everything. However, there was so much, I didn't really know where to start. And they have a list that says, do this first and do this first. But halfway through that first list, I'm like, well, what about this lighting? I want to learn that. And then I'd slide into the lighting. It's like, okay, well, wait, now what about sound? Why does sound so bad? And I'd go into there. So, the spazziness really kind of is what stopped me a little bit. But I still go back to it, and I still learn things, and I still am woefully ignorant of a lot of other things. But, baby steps.
Absolutely. So what drew you specifically to Full-Time-Filmmaker? I guess I haven't really done much research on other programs out like that. To be honest, I was kind of not a victim to the ads, but I succumbed to the ads that were being pushed to me, and I was like, you know what? I want to be a filmmaker. This seems like a likely path. Let me just purchase the course. Like, how did you end up finding it and choosing it?
I'm trying to think. One day I decided I was like the beginning of the year. This has only been a year-long journey. It started like January of 2020. Sorry,
Right.
too far back.
No, I got it.
And I offered to do a video for my kids' music studio, and they said yes. And as I was doing it, I thought, I could do this. I could do this, and it would work. And so then I started thinking, okay, I got to figure out how to do better than what I'm doing. So that's when I started looking up tutorials on Facebook or on YouTube and such. And certain faces kept popping up right off the bat: Peter McKinnon, Maddie Hapuya, and Parker Wahlbeck, who's his full-time filmmaker. He was another one, and his were more instructing. They're more about instructing how to do stuff. the other ones were entertaining and kind of fun to watch, but I was looking for the, the meat of the subject. How do you do these things?
Right.
And so I didn't even know it existed. And yeah, all the ads kind of came up, and like, oh, this is a thing? You can do this like online? I didn't know you could do that. I hadn't thought about it. And so that's where I saw it, and that's where I found it. And like I said, I made sure to see everything that was free before I committed to spending the money to buy it. And yeah, it's been really, really helpful. It's exactly what I needed. So.
Yeah, I find that not only the lessons are just chock full of everything you could possibly need to know in so many different areas, they also just added a photography section, which is something that I hope to explore. So I think it's like the gift that keeps on giving. I think it's definitely an investment that's worth pursuing if our listeners are considering it.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. If you're brand new starting out, don't know very much about anything, or want to go in this direction, I would say, yeah, look at all the free stuff first, get comfortable with it, and then once you understand it, what's there, then you can know if you're going to commit to the rest of it later. But yeah, it's been really helpful.
Yeah, I also find the Facebook group to be immensely helpful. I mean, that's how I found you and other female filmmakers in the group. I would have never, in my post that I ended up kind of doing a call for submissions for guests for this podcast, there were over 200 comments.
I was going to say, wasn't there a couple hundred people who were like, yes, I've been looking for this, and yes, we've all been looking for this, and as a woman, and that was one of the first things that I figured out. I think I'd been watching the tutorials for and it only, when I first barely started, and it only took a week for me to notice there was not very many women doing tutorials about how to use a camera and how to light and everything, and I was like, is it just me? Is it really a thing? And I didn't know, so I kind of was like, okay. And then when I got onto the Full-Time-Filmmaker Facebook page, I think they had like 8,000 to 10,000 people at the time in that page, and it was like, and then I started looking for them, and I noticed the same thing. There was like hardly any women, and they were there, but they were really hard to find.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, maybe it's not just me. Maybe this is actually a thing. So, and I'd have to comb through to find people, to find the women, just so that I could feel like I was not alone,
Yeah. And something that was really inspiring to me, I was just so fortunate enough to find some female inspirations outside of YouTube because, like you were saying, I could count on one hand the female videographers and filmmakers who are making content on YouTube currently that actually get attention and views and things like that. Yeah. But I also looked on YouTube just to find small accounts that use the term female filmmaker, female videographer, or women in film, and I could barely find anything.
I know, and I had to look, and I remember trying to, after that first week when I was just coming up with all these guys from young cool film dude planet, just and you'd have to type in like women filmmaker, women how to light, women content creator, and even then there were only a few women talking about that subject before it kind of shifted in how to light a woman, where the woman was the subject, not the presenter, the teacher.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, and I don't know why that is, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, where are all of the women in filmmaking, in YouTube content creation, in gear reviews? I mean, they're there, but is it because there's 10 men to 1 woman? Is it because they're just lost? Is it because they're too afraid to do it? I haven't figured out the answer yet, but that's one of my goals, is to start investigating why, like, where are all the women in filmmaking?
Exactly. So tell me more about how you're kind of pursuing this question. I know that you created Media Empress. Tell us a little bit about the mission behind this and your ideas and how you even got started on YouTube in the first place.
I think I started on YouTube so that I could record my progress. I love a before and after, and all I had was before, so I didn't know anything. I don't think I even owned a camera at the time I started the YouTube channel. But I just started off as, okay, I'm gonna just, and I was fearless enough because I knew no one would find it. I mean, based on what I had seen, I couldn't find women doing, I mean, YouTube is vast. It's like, I could totally make a channel like this because no one's going to see it, you know. And so that was my safety net, was just the anonymity, knowing I could be dumb, and it would, if it was bad, then no one would care, or no one would see it. So it just started off, this is me saying I'm going to do a channel. Next one, this is me looking for a camera, and everybody I asked telling me I need to rethink my life. And this is me trying to build a business on videography, and this was a terrible experience, but you know, you learn from it, because sometimes humor is all you get out of the bad experiences. And so, and I think about the fourth or fifth video, and I'd still been thinking about where can I find more women in this area? Somebody had posted on the Full-Time-Filmmaker Facebook page, who are your favorite filmmakers, content creators in this area? And there were 90 responses, and there was one woman among all those responses. And at that point, that kind of kicked me and was like, okay, I think I need to do an intervention, because, and I remember the one woman, her name was Brittany Janae. She was the one shining jewel of womanhood on that list of 90 guys. And I went to find her, and it was like, oh, thank goodness, they do exist. They are there, you know, and so that
just
was
a breath of fresh air. Right?
Yes, it was like, oh, and of course she was more advanced than I could do at that time either anyway, but I was just relieved to see they were there. And then shortly after after I saw that, I realized, okay, maybe I should make a Facebook page for women in filmmaking. And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I should start something like that. And like the minute I thought of it, I backed off and had a panic attack because I thought, this is something, and it needs to be something, but like my fear was just rolled over me. It was like, who am I to think that I could start something like this? Like, I don't even own a camera. How could I possibly think I could start a group of filmmaking women when, like, how could I possibly think I could do that? And that like stayed with me for a couple of days, until the point that, and I knew it was something, because I realized that the idea of not making it felt worse than the idea of doing it badly. Yeah, for sure. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And then so I made just a video of where are all the women in YouTube content creation, and where are all the women filmmakers, and I posted it on this Facebook site, on the Full-Time-Filmmaker site, and I got a whole bunch of responses, and I'm like, just come here. And I think part of the video was just, I don't know what I'm doing, just come to Media Empress, bring whatever you have and share your content, so that at least we can find each other and, get to know each other, and, maybe hire each other at some point. And that's what kicked it in. So that's where it started.
Yeah, I've been, you added me to the Facebook group, and I was just kind of going through all of the posts, and I love the concept, and I love that you just went for it. I think that your mission and the mission of this podcast align completely.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to do this podcast is because the thing that's inspired me most is seeing other women pursue this filmmaking dream of mine, and seeing other women succeed. It doesn't have to be, the content creators on YouTube who are getting millions and millions of views and have millions of followers. It's, someone who lives in Boston, someone who lives in San Diego and has a small video production company and films weddings and does, commercial work for local small businesses, and has this portfolio of work and has their own journey and has their own story. I wanted a platform for people like that to tell their stories. Because even, a lot of because when I was first, had the idea of this podcast, of course, I researched and I looked to see if something like this already existed.
Yep.
And there were some about, women in film, but like women in Hollywood and things like that. Mm-hmm. And there were like one-off interviews with Lizzie Pierce and other
Yeah.
female creators on YouTube, but there weren't like just kind of there wasn't a space where any woman can just share their filmmaking journey, no matter where they are in the process. Just, just talking about it.
And that's exactly what I found when I went looking, because I was trying to talk myself out of making a video or a Facebook page. Because I'm like, I can't anyway. But I'm like, maybe it exists already. I don't have to do it. And I would look, and I would find the really hardcore women filmmakers who were like in a very select group, who were very serious, New York City, serious cinematographer. Just and I'm like, I'm not that. I can't do that. I'm not at that level. And then, but I would go on the other end, and I would see, how to start a YouTube channel, which was also useful, but again, not quite what I was looking for. I wanted sort of something in the middle, and I really couldn't find anything for women. So I just made one.
Oh, exactly. That's what we have to do. We look, and if there's not something there already, we have to kind of be brave enough to step into the spotlight and create it. And even when I think about this podcast, one of the things that stopped me, or one of the hesitations that I had from doing it, is like, no one's going to listen to it. Nobody needs this. Nobody wants this. But I've had really positive feedback, even if it's just from one or two women that are in the industry saying like, oh, I've been looking for these stories, or I've been looking for other women to connect with. Like, that's what it's all about. It doesn't have to be, this podcast or this YouTube channel that's going to blow up and affect the lives of millions. All it took, like for Brittany Janae, who I actually happen to have a connection with, kind of Courtney Casanova, who I had on my podcast, who's actually a filmmaker in New Jersey. She's close with Brittany, so we've talked about her before. So I'm going to try to get her on the show. But it's like, Brittany Janae, she is so freaking talented. But she doesn't have, millions of subscribers and millions of views, but she's really making waves in the filmmaking space, for, female filmmakers and female filmmakers of color. And, it only takes one person to kind of inspire another person, and that chain reaction will just kind of carry you through. So that's what I think.
And it's such a relief to see. It's such a relief to realize, oh, I'm not alone. This is, and you always look for yourself, look for what connects. You connect with whoever is most kind of like yourself. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why I'm always looking for other women in this field, because it's like, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong, I am so grateful for all the guys who have taught me what a key light is and how to, what kind of monitor to get and all these things. But when I started the Media Empress idea, my parting shot to them was, thank you so much for teaching me everything you know. Now I'm going to take everything you gave me and I'm going to go find your sisters, because they're out there too. And they're probably watching also. They're just kind of too quiet or too worried about what are we going to think to do it. But I just wanted to find them and collect them so we could all find each other. So
I love that. And I'm so glad you did. It's people like you that inspired me to even take the leap and do this. So I think it can be something really beautiful, what we're doing. And like I said, even if it only affects one other woman, that is exactly the purpose of it.
Yeah. I mean, when you asked me to do this, like when you first, asked me to come on your podcast, my first thought was like, yes, I have hit the big time, kind of, and for you might be like, this is not the big time. But to me, it is, because you were someone I'd never met before who thought what I was doing and saying was worth noticing or mentioning or thinking about. And sometimes all you really need is one person to say that before you realize, oh yeah, maybe I can do that. And, I think that's, and just little drops of encouragement like that. I actually read an article about that. They were talking about women usually need about maybe three little, they call it like a little shoulder nudge, just three little bits of attention, three little bits of encouragement to really push women specifically into the, into a field or into a future that they might have been too afraid to do otherwise without that. And So this is just a little tap forward, which I really am so glad you're doing this. It's been really fun to listen to and watch and be on. So
awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I love that article. That's so funny. I think like the things that have kept me going, even when I, deal with imposter syndrome and the self-doubt, are like the little bits of encouragement. The other day I posted a video. I was in February for my sister's birthday, and it was something I was really proud of. And, I got a bunch of likes on Instagram. But when I had my friend Lexi on the podcast, she was telling me, she was like, Kel, I think about that video all the time. And I was like, what? Like this video that I just made from my heart for my little sister that, I wasn't getting paid for. I didn't put it up on YouTube. I just posted it on my Instagram. It really affected her. And it was just like that little bit of encouragement that tells me like, okay, next time I have an idea like this, I'm just going to go for it. It's just, something small like that.
And think about how many lives would change, how many actions that people would do, women would do, if there was just like rain, just little raindrops of these little pushes forward in these random directions. I think about that just like, as I think about this in my journey, there was, when I was afraid to post anything on the first Facebook page, when I first got, in FullTime-Filmmaker, one woman asked me a question about the story behind the video that I posted. And that one woman was like, oh, tell me about that. And that was enough of a push for me to think, oh, people actually do want to hear what I have to say. Oh, maybe I will do this YouTube video. And then when I started thinking about the Media Empress, again, like one woman made that comment about Brittany Janae as the one filmmaker. I'm like, okay, they're out there. There's not enough. I need to make another one. That was another push. And you doing this has been a push too. I can't tell you how much I've actually done between the time you've asked and the time I've started this, because it really made me think, well, what do I want to talk about? What am I about? What do I want to be? And until somebody asked the question, I didn't know what to say, but it did solidify. It really solidified what I was thinking about and what I wanted to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It only takes one. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, once you added me to the Media Empress Facebook group, I went and binged watched all your videos. And there's a few that I want to point out. And in one video, you had said that you take pride in putting yourself out there, kind of documenting your journey as you're going through it, instead of waiting until you know what you're doing. So how has this journey empowered you?
Oh, it's taken so much pressure off creating things. When I started, I thought, I'm going to have a business. And there's a certain amount of competence that you need to have in order to run a business. Even if it's not, even if you're just beginning, you got to be able to do some, things. And learning curves are sloppy. And learning this kind of a filmmaking is sloppy. And doing it with in this perspective with like hey, I'm a beginner, I don't know anything. It's very liberating to be able to say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I can only go up from here. So it made it a lot easier. Plus, it gives me a purpose and a reason to make these things. I've had to tell myself, look, quit trying to make the perfect video. That's not going to happen. That's just going to, and it trips me up. It trips me up a lot. So I've had to just say, okay, this is just going to be lame, but I'm putting it out there anyway. And I have progressed. And it's kind of fun to see what I was in the beginning to what I am now, and which is, I don't think that big of a jump, but it's enough that I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm making progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And that before and after kind of thing that we were talking about before, I find that to be so inspiring. Those are the things I look for when I, like when Parker Walbrook showed his first video that he made, I was like, oh my gosh.
I feel so much better. I was like, this is what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, when I think about, that was one thing I did when I first started, when I decided to get really serious about being, doing YouTube videos. I would look at all the people who were doing these beautiful shots, and then one day I went to their video list and I sorted them oldest to newest, and it was like, oh, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. I'm supposed to look horrible. Some of them I couldn't even get through. Like my favorites, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. What did they? Okay, but if they look like this, then I can look like that someday. So it was actually, yeah, that was very liberating too.
It was encouraging.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to pivot real quick and talk about the idea of your business, because when you first went into this filmmaking journey, I think you went the route of potentially, you know, opening up a business and being like a commercial filmmaker in that sense, you know, potentially recording and filming videos for local small businesses and going that route. Tell me what that journey was like for you.
It first started out on a whim. I asked my, you know, this music, like I said, the music studio where my kid goes. I said, hey, do you want me to make a music video or a video for you? Or I want to practice on somebody. They're like, sure. And then a few weeks later, I happened to be in the room when they were talking about they were going to hire somebody to filmmaker videos for them. And I kind of perked up, but I wasn't really one, so I couldn't say anything. So I sat outside the room where they were doing the interview, and I was listening to this guy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're considering that guy? I could totally do what he's talking about way better than he can. And it was like, I was mad.
Right.
And I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at myself for thinking, this whole time I thought I was horrible, but apparently there's a lot of horrible out there, and they're getting paid. So after that guy left, I like went into the office. I'm like, look, I want to do this. Okay, can I do the thing that you're asking to do? And he's like, you're hired. And I'm like, what? That's it? Yes, just like that.
Wow.
And that
was a paid gig, Mya?
Yeah. It was just, and it wasn't for a ton, but I like at that point I didn't care. It was like it was a reason to act. It was a reason to move forward. Because sometimes you just need a reason to act. There's something to be said with learning on your own. But if you've got a goal or a deadline, that moves you forward a lot faster. And it's exactly what it did. So I made like 4 little 1-minute videos for that studio. And while I was in the middle of that, my sister had a friend. My sister is a photographer, and she had a client wanted a video, and she's like, well, I don't do that, but my sister does, and they hired me. And that was my first real, they don't know me, client, but they're hiring me gig, client, so, and I was nervous about it, because we talk about imposter syndrome, and I'm like, okay, they think, I don't know, I was comparing myself to like the Peter McKinnon and the, but they had no idea who that was. That's not their field. This was a bunch of lawyers. They're like trying to figure out their own area of expertise. They don't know how to work a microphone, but I do. And that was one of the big things about how do you get over imposter syndrome. Put yourself next to somebody who knows less about filmmaking than you do. And you'll like, oh yeah, and you realize how much you actually do know, and then it sort of dies down. So, and then I did this job, and it was great. I felt like, and it was scary, but it was also like, okay, I guess I'm doing this now. I guess I'm a filmmaker because I've already done it. So that was another little step up in my confidence. So, and I bought a gimbal with the money. So.
Awesome. Yeah, always invest in yourself, invest in the business if you can. Yep. That worked. So did you ever try the free to fee method for your business?
Not really, only because I would have, I guess I started doing it. I think the music studio was sort of a free to fee. Because I asked them if I could try filming one of their students with one of their teachers, and I did this little montage, and it was cute, and they were singing, and it was a kid, and of course that's always cute. Mm-hmm. And they liked it, and I kind of was hoping maybe they would ask me to do something more in that if they needed it, and they didn't until, because I hadn't been presenting myself as, hey, I'm this. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna do this. That was more like, can I maybe do a thing for you, sorta?
Can I just try this out? Right. Yeah.
But I'm telling you, when I stormed into that office after that first guy left the interview, I was like, I can do this for you, and I can do it better than that. Will you hire me? And they're like, yeah. And I walked out going, I didn't know that was in there. you can do
Right?
that. So,
Wow.
so that was,
I don't.
yeah.
I just don't have the courage. My struggle is like approaching businesses because I'm just so nervous about embarrassing myself. You
Yeah.
know, is it like because, like I said, I just don't think I have the reps in. I know I have like the ability. I know what I'm capable of because I've seen things that I've produced, and I know that I can take something into an edit. But it's just like, you know, approaching a real business that has like a real reputation on the line. It isn't just me filming for my friends or my
Yeah.
family, or, you know, something that might actually be seen by like a large amount of people for a business, representing a business, is something that's just so intimidating to me. And I know once I do one, I'll be totally fine. I know once I get over that hump, I'll be good. But I literally just can't bring myself to do it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And I've done it already and I still struggle to do that. That was a friend of a friend. That's how I got that job. And it worked out great. But I'm also still kind of trying to figure out where I want to be and how I want to do this. And but again, put yourself next to somebody who doesn't know anything about filmmaking, and it'll make you feel better. And it was interesting. So one of the videos that I did was the first time I tried to market myself for free, and it was a horrible experience. But I had gone into this. I decided I want to make like a makeup artist video for somebody. I didn't know any makeup artists, but I went online. I looked at whoever was nearest, who had the best website, and I went in to offer my service, because who's not going to want a free video? Who's
Yeah,
not
of
going to
course.
want that? And honestly, you forget that people really want those things. I mean, you possess as a filmmaker the skills to give people this product that they want, but they're too afraid to ask because they don't know who to ask and they don't know what they're going to get. So there's all these invisible people wishing they could have a video or a film about their business, and you have no idea, and you won't until you ask. So this is one of the things that I learned from this horrible experience. Was when I went in there, I went in to talk to the owner. And I had gotten myself all dressed up, and I looked like I was one of their clients, and I walked in there, and the owner wasn't there. And I was like, okay, fine.
Plan B.
And there was a woman in the seat. There was one hairstylist there. So I'm like, okay, warm body, let's go see what she does. And I kind of told her what I was doing. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to have a free one of those, kind of. And then she asked if I had a website she could see. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, well, do you have like a Instagram account? I'm like, no. And I remember her client was sitting in her chair with her hair just covered in highlighting foils, and she like lifted up her head and pulled the highlighting foils out of her face and was like, well, do you have a card? And I'm like, I have nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing to show anybody. And that was my first experience into the world of, free for fee business. No, I didn't even know what to call myself. Like, what's your business called? I'm like, I was really new, kind of.
Right.
Oh,
right.
it was so mortifying.
Oh my goodness.
And
How do you bounce back from that?
You do a lot of shouting at yourself and moaning in the car on the way home, and then other stuff comes up you got to deal with, and then you just turn it into something funny, and it's got at least that purpose. But yeah, so that was the first thing I learned. If you're gonna have a business, name it. At least you can tell people what it's gonna be, what you're called.
Right. Right.
But again, even the worst experiences, you can get something. They're never in vain. You always get something out of it. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, whether that's a client or a lesson.
Definitely.
For sure. So, so everyone's filmmaking journey looks a little bit different. And when we spoke before we started recording, you said you decided to put the business that you had on hold to focus more on YouTube. Tell me about that decision.
I think it goes back to filmmaking is messy and learning curves are messy. And I'm also part of another sort of a master class for photographers. Before I found FullTime-Filmmaker, again, my sister is a photographer. She learned her skills from another photographer instructor named Sue Bryce, who is fabulous. And if you're interested in photography, portrait photography, starting a business as a woman, I highly recommend going to check out her page and her YouTube videos. I think Sue Bryce Education is the name of it anyway, but it taught basically the photography side of what the Full-Time-Filmmaker does. And she has a program called the 90-Day Startup, where you basically give yourself a set of goals. First, you start figuring out your backdrop. Then you're figuring out how to value yourself so that you can ask for money. It's really good. But anyway, as I was going through these steps, I got tripped up on the one about how to value yourself, because and I was trying to ask myself these questions. Well, what am I worth? What is my worth, or what is my work worth? And I was filming myself because I wanted to see what came out. I wasn't filming for anybody in particular. I just was kind of trying to, so I could remember what I was saying as I was saying it. And it was during one of those things I realized I don't actually want to be a photographer. I want to be a filmmaker. And it's actually a video I just recently put up on the Media Empress YouTube channel. You can see my face changing from anguish to this realization to, oh my gosh, yeah, this is what I want to do. And as I started making these videos, and I thought to post one and on that Facebook group, and the response was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I feel like. Oh, that is so real. Oh, that is, just the authenticity really resonated with people in a way I was not expecting. And so I started making a few more. And as I went through each of these, steps and coming to realize what I wanted to be. And it was after that I decided, I think maybe I need to put away, these are the people I want to speak to. I want to speak to the women who are afraid of what it looks like. Just to show people, if you're afraid of starting something or doing something new or failing at something, in all the YouTube videos I've seen about how to make a, blank, there are very few that show what the process of going through it looks like, feels like. A lot of what it looks like, not what it feels like. And I don't mind showing what it feels like. Like, again, that's all I got. It's like, I don't have any skills, but I'm not afraid to show my weakness, because I know I will not always be weak. And so I feel comfortable doing that. And it's kind of funny, because as I was thinking about it, I'm like, this is like my greatest weakness, is how inexperienced I am and how, afraid I am to start. And suddenly now that seems like that's going to be like my greatest strength, because I'm not alone. I'm not the only one out there, and I can put this out there. I can help other women know that if you're freaking out, you're doing it right. If you're afraid to start, that's just part of it. Instead of having fear take up the entire room, it just, you put it in you kind of pick it up a little bit and stick it in the corner and say, I see you, but stay there, but I got to go do this. And it just sort of puts it in perspective. So that's sort of what made me decide, I think I'm going to put the business part on hold and kind of focus on the YouTube channel a little more and explore that as I learn. Someday I will be good enough to be able to do something for the business, but on the way there, I'm going to document the process of getting there.
Yeah. So for Media Empress, you are a filmmaker. You still want to pursue filmmaking. So is it going to be kind of you still growing and learning on your journey and then documenting it and kind of just talking about the real emotions and guiding other women who are also starting out? Is that the future for Media Empress? What does that look like?
I'm not sure what the future of Media Empress is going to be. When it started, it was just supposed to be me and my little journey about what it looked like. And from there, it became, finding other women in filmmaking and just finding each other and collecting women of that. And I always wanted to be that, but I kind of get the feeling it's going to need to grow and be added to and become something more that, and I don't know what that is yet. Another thing I found when, I was asking the guys, like, why are there so few women doing film stuff? And many said that, in that industry, you work with who you know. And since the guys work with, they work with, they're all friends, they're not, you know, and they're all friends with other guys. You know, and they're not looking to make a statement about equality. They just want to get the job done, and so they gravitate towards each other, and that's not unreasonable. We all do that.
Right.
And with internet and YouTube and women in film, I'm just still learning what the needs are, you know, and like, why are there so few women filmmakers recognized in the world of history? Like, where are all the women making YouTube content about filmmaking and skills? Who's doing all of the tutorials about equipment and gear from a woman's perspective? And I'm just starting to do a couple of those. I just filmed one called "What Kind of Camera Should I Date?" Because
I saw that.
like everyone always asks, "What kind of camera should I get?" You know, I'm like, it was like, it's kind of like asking someone, "What kind of guy should I date?" It's like, it's so broad. How can you give an answer? It's like, I'm not a mind reader. How am I supposed to know what kind of camera you want to date? And so then bringing up questions in context with something familiar like that from like maybe a woman's perspective, and it just, I'm starting to bring my words more in a little more. So it's kind of sneaking in that direction. But as far as what the future is, I don't know yet. I don't think I know enough yet about what the need is. But when I figure out what the need is, I want it to fill it. So yeah.
It's all part of the journey, though.
Yeah.
We're excited about it either way. What I love watching your content. It always makes me laugh. First of all, you have such a great personality, and you know, your storytelling ability is, I think, really what carries your videos. You know, not only do you have this quirky personality, and you're fun to listen to, fun to watch. It's like the actual message of all of your videos, and I think that you are really going to excel in the YouTube space because of that. And I'm just wondering, kind of, where did you get the confidence to just kind of, I don't know, put yourself out there? And I know that you were a writer. Do you script some of your stuff? Because like the writing, if it's scripted, is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I do write it. Writing is where that's where I started. You know, when you're, like I said, this kid that wanted to be MTV music videos as a kid, that didn't exist to be doing those things. And so all of my creativity kind of funneled into the only technology that did exist for me at that time, which was a pencil and paper. Mm-hmm. And that's why I became a writer. And I still love it. And I have, you know, I make these connections with things that are in this funny way that kind of make me chuckle. And then I develop it as I write it out. And I'm like, this is kind of making me laugh more. So I keep doing it. And then it's like, somebody else needs to hear this besides me. And so then I put it out there. Yeah, ideas come pretty easily to me. What trips me up is the execution of the ideas. If I just write it, it's easy, I can do it. But if I have to actually film something, it just goes back to, how do I do this? How do I make that? How do I light this? What's that Bermuda Triangle of aperture and ISO and that other thing, kind of, you know?
Right. So has learning the technical side of filmmaking, has kind of enhancing your skills in that area enhanced your overall, I guess, like video process and performance when you're on camera?
Yeah. Yes. I think I've always been kind of a ham. You know, as a kid, I liked being, you know, funny and clever, and as a kid, and in high school, I liked theater and you know, being on a stage, and then I'm a teacher, and so teaching in high school, public speaking to large groups of people that's a comfortable place for me. With YouTube and video, I can do all of that. Plus, with editing, I can make myself sort of look like the best version of myself. Like, I can be all goofy and silly and smart, and then I can cut out all the dumb parts and the screw ups and just leave the good stuff, and then enhance it with timing and pacing and music, so it, you know, presents better. Again, and this is, I like it because this is how I wish I sounded in real life. This is how I wish I could present myself in real life, but you know, you can't, so you just, I think that's why I like editing so much, is because I can cut out all the dumbness. So
Right. The last thing I want to talk about before we kind of get into our wrapping up questions is that I forgot to mention before. In your Media Empress group, you came up with this concept of like levels of critique. I just kind of want to know your logic behind that and how that's been working for you, because you had this idea that when someone posts, they can, ask for various levels of critique. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because I thought it was genius when I saw it.
Yeah, so when you are new so when you go to the YouTube Facebook page, the first thing up there is post your content. I don't care what it is, put something up there. Because what I found was that the main thing that holds people back, specifically women, and their filming stuff, is fear. Fear of looking dumb, fear of it not being good enough, fear of what people are saying. And so I felt that because I wanted critiques on what I did, some of them, but you just put it up there and say, hey, what do you guys think? It's hard to quantify. It's like, what are you really asking versus what do they want to tell you? And so I made this scale, like on a scale of 1 to 5, how much critique do you really want? And the whole purpose was to dispel the fear or make it specific so that you got what you needed. So level 1 is just getting over the fear and posting something. You just say, this is for level 1, and all you're going to get is people saying, hey, you did it, great, that looks awesome, and why are you worried, this is terrific, kind of. You're not asking for critique, you're just getting over the fear of putting something out there. And once you've done that, you move on to the second, level number 2, which is, I've overcome it, and now I'm getting more comfortable posting more stuff. And then 3, more comfortable with just a little bit of content, a little bit more specific critique. Is there anything you think I could have done better? That kind of thing. 4 is a little higher than that. And then 5 is like industry standard critique, like you would get from a teacher or a mentor. And you may not like what they say, but both of you know that when you're asking for that, you're going to get what you get, and it's meant in the spirit of, I want to help you succeed faster. So, because you're not a mind reader. You don't know what people want, and sometimes you don't even know what you want. But here, at least you could quantify it, and you don't have to post it for critique at all. I've posted stuff that I like it. I want people to see this. I'm not interested in having it critiqued. This is 5 years old, but I like it. And maybe someone else will like it. And so, but it's there if you want it. It's there if you need it. And the purpose is to be able to overcome your fear, whatever level of fear that is. Because really, I think fear is what holds people back so much. Like fear of trying, fear of failing, fear of looking bad. And, and I think that's like an underlying theme of the whole purpose of Media Empress is to just kick the fear, just to dispel the fear, and whatever that means.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that system, if something like that existed in other groups, or even when I was going to college and in my video production classes, like I think that I would have been a lot less intimidated at the idea of just putting my work out there, because there are some things that I've done in the past that I have certain critiques on that I just kind of wanted to get them validated. Like, I don't really like the lighting here. Do you think the lighting's okay?
Mm-hmm. And that's like another thing, because you hear people like, I made this and it's not really that great, but what do you think? It's like, you don't need to say that. You just need to say, hey, I did this, ta-da. And if you want the critique, you can quantify what exactly you're looking for, and the people who can give you the critique can give you exactly how much you want without overwhelming you or making you, freak out, because, you're comparing yourself to someone who's on a different level, so. It's just creating a comfort level so that you can progress without being so afraid of progressing.
Yeah. And it's just enhancing the community too. Just a supportive community of female filmmakers. That's all I've been looking for this whole time.
Yeah. And it's interesting to go between. So I've tried to find. It's interesting. I've posted questions on both groups, like on the predominantly guy group versus the predominantly woman group. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see the different responses when you ask a question. Like I asked a question about lighting. Hey, I've got these, 5600K lights. Should I get some more? Do I need to do this? Should I buy a more expensive one or not? And I put them purposely in both Facebook groups. And the response, and in the guys group, the first response I got was, that question doesn't make any sense. What about this? What about this? What about this? You might need this. And in the women's group, it was, that question could be answered in a lot of different ways. have you thought about this? Have you thought about maybe thinking this? This is probably what you want to do. And they both give the exact same answers, but their delivery was so different. It was like, wow, And it reminded me of when I was a kid and I had a problem. I would take it to my mom and my dad. And my dad would be like, oh yeah, this is what you got to do. You got to do this and this and this. You're going to need this, but I know a guy, I can get that for you. And don't worry, you're going to be fine. And I'd take it to my mom, be like, oh, what happened? Oh, tell me about it. Oh, it was, and she would give me the answers too, but it was like 75% affirmation and 25% information with the time, versus with the dude group, it was the other way around. It was 75% information and this little bit of affirmation,
Yeah.
And sometimes you want them both. I don't think one is better than the other. I think it's just, they're different, and sometimes you want one over the other. But it's interesting to see it when you know what you're looking for. And that was one of the fun takeaways of starting Media Empress, was just seeing how the communication differed between a group of women versus a group of guys. So,
yeah. Is Media Empress open to the public? So if our viewers and listeners of this podcast want to be a part of this community, can they join it?
The only reason it's not, the women who have been in it so far are the ones that have either seen my stuff that I've posted on FullTime-Filmmaker, or I've actively found them and said, hey, will you be a part of this? And they have. It's not closed. It's just, well, it is closed, but it's not, you don't even have to be a woman to join it. You just, it's made for that, specifically for women. So yes, absolutely. I would say if you are looking for a place to go and find other women content creators, go to Media Empress. I will absolutely get you in as soon as I see you, and then start sharing your content.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So that's, you guys heard it here, head over to the Media Empress Facebook page and Facebook group and, click join group, and Mya will get you in there. No problem. And you'll be part of the community. I can't wait to see how Media Empress is going to continue to grow. Even for the few weeks I've been in it, I haven't been posting anything, but I've been consuming the content, and it's been very inspiring. So how can the listeners and viewers of this podcast support you as a filmmaker?
Again, I'm still really new, so I have the Facebook group. Just come and join it and be a part of it, so that you can all find each other and work with each other and support each other, and I don't know, maybe hire each other. Sometimes you want to work with other women, you just don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And then the YouTube channel is, I think, the thing I'm focusing on the most right now, just to build it into something, and I'm open to finding out what that is. Right now it's about how to not be afraid to start stuff, and what it looks like if if she's, turning into a blubbering mess, weepy mess because she is figuring herself out, then okay, if I do that, then it's okay. And yeah, I'd like to build that up as well. So join that, subscribe to that, and if it's something worthwhile, someone who could use it, pass it on to someone else, like share it with somebody that would be like, oh, you should totally see this.
Yeah, definitely. And I can't wait to have you back on the show so we can just continue the conversation, because as you continue on your journey and as I continue on my journey, and our journeys kind of parallel in a lot of ways, I know that we're going to have, lots to talk about. So Mya, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been so wonderful. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. All right. As usual, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye.